Hey, Small Steps, Big Wins family. Welcome back to another episode. I have a fantastic conversation in store for you with Nancy Waring. And Nancy wrote a book called The Vibrant Sage. And her conversation just takes you into her 5 pillars and what it really means to live a life as a vibrant sage. So, take a listen, enjoy, and without further ado, here we are. Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Nancy, I'm so excited that you're here. When your bio and your sketch came across my email, I'm like, I have to have her on the podcast because I want to hear about your book, but I even more so want to hear about what a vibrant sage is. So before we even jump into that, just give us a background of who you are and why you're here.
All right. Well, I'm going to start with what a vibrant sage is. It is a person who taps into what is authentically them, their inner power, that inner wisdom, and they live life unapologetically from a place of purpose.
Wow.
And I want to build a community where we all feel like that vibrant sage because my background is I just lived life the way it was expected. You grow up, you go to college, you have a career, you get married, you have kids. And I did all that and it was wonderful in so many ways. But then I had an awakening, not a midlife crisis, that I just felt that there was something else. There was something in my heart where I was wondering, who is Nancy? If
Mm.
I strip away being a mom, being a wife, I was a speech pathologist for 30 years and strip away that, who was I? And I was lost. And in fact, while I'm sharing this story, I'm getting tingles at that idea. But it was running my first marathon at the age of 47.
Oh, wow.
And I hadn't been a
Congrats.
runner. It took 4 months to train. And when I crossed the finish line, I realized I could do anything I put my mind to. And I wasn't the vibrant sage back then. I didn't necessarily feel that way, but it put something in my heart, which made me realize that I could do something that I wanted to do, not because any other person, parents, husband, kids put on me.
I
And that just
love
started that journey.
Wow. I love the word awakening as opposed to crisis. Because when you use the word awakening, there's a positive connotation to it as opposed to crisis. You know, when you think of somebody in crisis, you're like, "Oh my god," you go to the negative, but I can see for anybody who's, actually watching this, if you're watching this, I can see the light coming on in Nancy's face. Like, you're just lighting up. When you talk about an awakening, there's an aura, there's a presence, there's a positive connotation to an awakening. In a way, it almost sounds like the hero's journey. Are you familiar with the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell? You know, like the hero's journey where you're just it's like you've got something in your soul that's deep and burning. You wanna talk a little bit about your book and what prompted you to write that, and what was the outcome out of that?
The book was a long process, almost 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And I started in March of 2021. My father had passed away a few months before, and it was during the COVID time. And I had left my profession as a speech pathologist with the goal of helping people live a healthy lifestyle so they wouldn't have chronic lifestyle disorders and then they wouldn't have strokes and other neurological problems.
Mm.
And in the middle of COVID, I realized I hadn't touched enough people's lives. And it got me really sad between that and then my dad passing away and just what can I do? How can I touch more lives? And I started to journal. And through that process, I thought, I'm going to write a book. I reached out to a book coach, and the next week I met with her. And then by the next week, I had post it notes all over a room. And the foundation for what became the Vibrant Sage, it didn't start that way with my 5 pillars of breath, movement, nutrition, sleep, and living with purpose, that was there. And through this whole process, those have been unwavering. How I'm sharing the information is a little bit different. And because it took so long, there were a lot of changes that took place in my life. So through that, the book evolved. It
Mm.
wasn't the Vibrant Sage to start out with. I don't know whether I shared what it was called before. It was called the H2 Lifestyle, Happy Horny Cells, Happy Horny Life.
That would have been interesting
And
too. That's a mouthful, though. I kinda like the vibrant sage. It kinda encompasses
yeah,
a
I
lot
like
more in
that
there.
better too. But it was the idea of young, youthful, vibrant cells.
Right.
But I sent it to an editor who was into demographics, and it just fell flat. And then I started to ask
Mm.
other women about it. And through that evolution, I moved to Florida, and it was a real hard struggle. So a lot of soul searching, and now that ends up coming into the idea of the sage wisdom. It's
Mm.
at this point, I felt like naked in a way. Who really am I? I've written this book, and it comes from both a experiential place as an athlete and getting older. I'm 64. In the science and life experiences as a speech pathologist and coaching client. But then I realized I needed something else.
Mm.
And it evolved as I interviewed for professionals for my book. And they were people who I knew, most of them. And for breath, it was a breathwork teacher I had. And
Mm.
through this person, as I got the training, got me to feel comfortable becoming a yoga instructor. That was a goal one day when I became flexible, realizing that if that was my goal to be a yoga instructor, I would never be a yoga instructor. And in the Vibrant Sage, I really feel that journey took it from the H2 lifestyle to some of the soul searching to now this is really my heart space. And I believe from the bottom of my heart that each of us has something really special inside. And it takes a little while sometimes to tap into that. You ever heard of the Golden Buddha?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I have
So
heard of that story where and that was actually in the movie Finding Joe, that the story of Joseph Campbell, and yeah, yeah. I mean, for those who are listening, go ahead if you wanna quickly share what that story is. It's a great
the
story of the Golden Buddha.
and it's a true story. There was this golden Buddha over
Mhm.
1,000 years ago in this monastery, and they knew that I forget where it's from. It was in China, and they covered up the Buddha with clay to protect it from the warriors who were coming. And the
Mhm.
warriors came. They massacred everyone. The Buddha stayed with the clay on it for almost 10,000 years. The monks now living in the monastery needed to move it. When they went to move it, there was a crack. And
Mm.
through seeing that crack, they started to uncover that it had this beautiful Buddha was covered with clay. And inside it revealed a golden Buddha, which you can
Yeah.
now see. I think it's in Taiwan. But we're almost all like a golden Buddha in terms of we're born with this purity and this purpose. I believe we're born with that in the spirit inside of us and these gifts to give. Yet different factors in our life, they might be trying to help us with our parents and teachers and all of that.
Mhm.
We lose that who we are, our essence that we're born with. And through life experiences, sometimes if we really sit with those and try to work it out, we're able to chisel away at some of this stuff that's been put on us to bring out our authentic self.
So,
And
no, I was gonna say, so what are like, in your experience then, you talked about we all have that golden Buddha inside of us, and a lot of us, we just don't we know it's there. We've got this outer layer of expectation. I think it feels almost like an expectation of what society thinks we should do or not be like, and then but we've got this authentic self living inside of us. In your experiences, what have you found that helps people, or even you personally helped you find your inner true authentic self, and then not only just find it but allow it to um, become alive? What would you say, or what would your suggestion be?
When you're living your life, there's some action, something you're doing. For me, it was running in my fitness. After my
Mm,
marathon, I got obsessed. I lost a lot of weight. I got super fast. I was strong. And I even had a picture of me where I thought it was a pillar of health. So
mm,
externally, I felt that I looked like that really skinny, strong, amazing, healthy 53-year-old woman at that time. Actually, I felt like I was 20. And I ran my fastest half marathon, an hour and 52 minutes. Had a beer. Then
mm,
and I'd been having a lot of cramping and some issues, and my body was telling me that I was not treating it right. But I thought
mm,
because I could run fast, I was getting accolades, and I was feeling good about
mhm,
the fact I was skinny because society says in so many ways to get skinny. And I fell. I tore my
mm,
labrum. It was a mess. And it was through that journey of healing. What is health? What is
mm,
wellness? And because I did that soul searching, was how all of this happened. Well,
mm,
it's not necessarily the idea of being super skinny or being super fast. And how was that impacting my life? And there were times as a speech pathologist, and now I've admitted it a few times, I almost fell asleep on my clients because I was giving
mhm,
so much in terms of my workouts, my running, and the intensity. Other parts of my life were just falling a little bit to the side. Those things that were almost on autopilot. I was still a
mhm,
great therapist, but things that were easier there. I had people asking me if I was sick, or if there was a
mhm.
problem. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Again, I was viewing it from an egoic and how I thought this image is supposed to be. But that
Mhm,
injury made me realize something wasn't quite right. And
mm,
that was
mhm,
a soul
yeah,
searching process that eventually even took me to doing a DNA assessment, understanding why I was a fast runner and why I needed recovery time, which I
mm,
didn't get
mhm,
myself.
mhm,
And then as I got more into the yoga and doing a deeper dive even into the science of everything, that's
mhm,
when I started to think, okay, let me see what feels good for me, not what somebody else tells me. So I'm a very strong advocate, and you don't do what all the influencers are telling you. You
yeah,
can
yeah,
listen to things or reading books, but ultimately your body has a wisdom within and it tells you something. For me, it was that fitness, it was that exercise. And through my coaching, so often people will come to me, well, I heard this happened recently. You need to do 10,000 steps a day and eat 100 grams of protein. I'm like, okay, that might be good for that influencer. That was going on in my head. But it might not be good for you. So what I would say, if you're struggling, if there's something, just really look to see where that validation's coming from and if it's going
mm,
outside, and to come into the silence inside, even if it is for 3 breaths. That's why breath to me is very powerful, and just sort of listening inside, quieting the mind to see what you need. And it's all about energy. And it's not that everything's easy, but if there's something inside that almost is like this will and going, you need to do it. And that's that
mhm,
driving purpose, then to
mm,
go for it unapologetically. And it's usually something a little novel that you did not, for me, I didn't expect to be a runner. I
mm,
didn't expect to
okay,
be an author. The idea of a vibrant sage was something that it became an evolution, and in a meditation, the word the vibrant sage came out. And since energy is what it's all about and the
mhm.
wisdom within, that was a
How did
long-winded answer.
That's okay. How did you overcome the inertia then? Like all of us, if we have that little voice inside that says, "Okay, go do this." Go like you have a little bit of a drive. A lot of us, or I wouldn't say a lot of us, but sometimes people listen to the drive or listen to the little voice and then go to the drive, and some people don't. For you, you obviously listened. What was it for you that moved you from just listening into action?
I needed to be able to do it to myself to help others. And part of the experience, there are different levels. But one time, and it's a story in my book, and I call the guy Lou. He was a client I had. He had a major stroke. His right leg had been amputated because of
Mm,
type 2 diabetes. And for 1 week, I'd go into his room to see if he would be able to answer simple questions and follow directions. And he couldn't. And it was in that room I realized that it didn't have to happen. It was in my mind, I created a whole story that Lou worked really hard. He kept telling his wife, honey, when I retire, we're going to enjoy life.
Mm,
And here, when you have a stroke, you can lose it just like that. But if he had taken better care of himself, he may not have been in this place. So, my own health journey, both for myself and then meeting people, I started to learn that not everybody likes exercising in the gym. What am I going to do? And that can be in your DNA. Did you know that?
no, I didn't. No. No, unpack that
Motivation
one. So, motivation is whether or not that's in your DNA.
or
That's
something
that
like working out
yeah, that's
intrinsically or
fascinating. I never heard of
physically.
that before. Wow. I never heard of
So,
that.
but with that, I had to find out, unravel what it is. What is this thing we call health? And it's just so much more than the body, that body, mind, spirit, and all of that together, bringing it, and they all intertwine. And in the book, the idea is with the 5 pillars, at any time, you can tap into these areas. The breath can help you calm down, and there's so much stress and anxiety
Mm,
and
yeah.
movement in different parts of your life. Maybe you'll be a runner, maybe another time a yogi, maybe you're just walking the 10,000 miles, not miles, 10,000 steps. But honoring where you are in that period of life and what works for you, but as long as you're moving, your nutrition can change. We used to eat junk when we were 20. Our bodies aren't as forgiving.
Yeah.
And the food's different, but recognizing that and not to be judgmental for ourselves or others, the power of sleep, but then that purpose. And as a therapist, I used to question why so many of the adults who had strokes were around the age of retirement. And I
Mm,
thought maybe it had something to do with they didn't know what else they were going to do. And in the research for
yeah.
my book, yes, there's a whole body of research out there about the importance of living from a place of purpose throughout
Oh,
your life,
wow.
but
Wow.
especially as you get older, and that improves your health outcomes, your cognitive outcomes. And as I share in the book, it could be
Wow.
taking care of your cat that you love in purpose to something grand. It really doesn't make any difference, but what makes you give something to the world that's greater than yourself. It's not
Oh,
from an
wow.
egoic place.
We've heard people talk about purpose. What's your purpose in life? Why are you here? And I sometimes feel like we just blow that question off. And from what you were
Mhm.
saying and what I heard, which I think was just fascinating, is that there's research now that backs that says when you live with purpose, you actually live a healthier, longer, more productive life when you have that purpose in your life. And what I also love that I caught was that your purpose doesn't need to be grandiose. It could be just caring for an animal. I think that is amazing right there. Anybody listening should just pause for a moment and realize that if you feel like you're living your purpose right where you are, it doesn't have to be a really big thing, and that's okay. It is amazing how we often in our culture, our society get sucked into this idea, and I think really social media makes this really brings this out. We get sucked into this idea that we have to have big it has to be big in order to be meaningful. You have to do something big in order to accomplish something, and it doesn't have to be. If it's important and big to you, then that's all that matters, and that's what you were just talking about, where it's your purpose. If your purpose is just to take care of your cat, then it's
Yeah,
great. It's
and it's
okay. Yes, it's genuine. You actually want that there. Now, your book unpacks each of the 5 pillars, correct? The breath,
correct.
movement, nutrition, sleep, and purpose, right? Out of the 5, if somebody heard that list and then got overwhelmed, what would you say to help them focus or get started when you hear all 5 of those pillars? Because you kinda go to the, "Oh, well, I gotta get all of them right." What would you how
Breathe.
would you, attack that? Breathe. Breath work.
Taking a night.
Why would breath
You don't
why
even have to do breath work, but just taking it, as long as you have your breath, you have your life.
True.
And our breath tells us so much about how we're feeling. So it's a tool that we have with us at any time.
How
So
so?
recognizing
Explain
that
what that means. If somebody's just listening is like, "Oh, well, I just breathe." You're just taking your it's involuntary. We're just breathing
it is when
involuntarily. It's
but when
movement.
you make it conscious, you're taking it often it's because you're now taking a deeper breath and feeling that flow, and now you're focused on it, and then you exhale, because when you exhale, you're getting rid of a lot of waste, and it's been shown, particularly slow inhale in, pause, exhale out, put a little smile on your face, do it 4 times, and I promise you, you're going to feel a little bit better. And chances are the
Mm.
listeners, and if you have this in there, you may be holding your breath. Just check right now.
I've
I
heard it
mean,
means. Yeah, if you stare at a screen, a computer or what I think isn't there a name for that? Like computer apnea or something like that, where it's like you when you're reading your emails, they found people
teen
hold email
right. They
apnea. Is
have
that what
found
it's called?
teen
Yeah.
this to 20 seconds, but if I told you to hold your breath for 15 seconds right now, you would be like, "That's really hard," but we're doing it, and just think about how that's going to impact our alertness. And there's a
Yeah.
reason why so often by the middle of the day we start to get tired. There's a circadian rhythm, but also in terms of the way we've been working and
Mhm.
focused, we tend to take shallow breaths. Now we're not getting as much oxygen to the brain. So I would say that's number one. And there's a reason for that being one and purpose being five. I see
Mm,
those as the bookends
okay.
because the breath isn't complicated. It's simple, maybe not easy. And having that purpose, which becomes your driving force of why you need to take care of yourself. You don't have a reason to
Mhm.
take care of yourself. Why are you going to really work towards exercise and movement
Sure. Right.
or exercise and eating right? I don't care, but when you've got something a little greater than yourself. So those would be the two. I usually say that, or I ask somebody what resonates, because I do tell my reader, you can go to whichever chapter seems to be calling you the most, because
Mhm.
they're all important in their own way. I have a story, I have the science, I have professional interviews, and some tips in each one. So you don't have to unpack it all, just see what resonates.
So for the other 3, we touched on breath and we touched on purpose. The other 3, movement, nutrition, and sleep. For each of those, can you just give a little snippet about what would be maybe the most, impactful in each of those areas for somebody listening and they wanna take a small step in movement or a small step in nutrition or a small step in sleep? What can we do?
In movement, have little movements with your breath. So stretching. So even standing up and sitting down, or
Mm,
here I'm in my chair, taking a deep breath, inhaling in, exhaling to the side, and just using that breath and that movement and finding those little spaces that might be tight. Using that breath, breathing in and
mhm.
stretching and getting up. Even going to the bathroom after 20 minutes or 30 minutes sitting at your computer is good for your body because you've just changed. You don't have, in terms of gravity, they're just simple movements. Also, walking after a big meal is great for digestion and helps our blood sugar levels.
Yeah, I've heard that before too. Yeah, I try and get out and get a walk after that. But yeah, I have heard that one. How about for nutrition?
Nutrition, you have to listen to your gut.
Mm. What does
Our
that
gut
mean?
tells us a lot. It means you have a lot of gas, you have a lot of bloating. What are your poops like? What kind of energy do you feel after you eat? Do you find that your energy comes up and then you crash?
Mm.
Are you chronically hungry? Just tapping into that. I have a fascinating interview there with a man who's a naturopath, and he's the keto doctor. He actually has a podcast too. He used to be almost all vegetarian, 90%. Then he had a lot of stress in his life, and now he's 90% carnivore.
Wow. Okay.
And when I met Dr. Carl, I was grossed out by his plate, and he knows this story. So then I asked him, "Why do you have all this meat?" And for him, that worked for his body. So the most important thing is to tap in how the foods you eat are actually making you feel. And the idea of
Mm.
vibrancy is energy, arousing. It's all about energy. And if you're not feeling it, there's something that's not quite right, and it's your body's working too hard. and
Interesting
to
question
recognize.
to That's a good question to ask ourselves then. How do we feel when we're eating certain foods? And that just, as I think about that, it really ties into awareness, doesn't it? It just ties into being very conscious of what you're not only what you're doing, but what your body is telling you while you're doing it as well. And how often we just go on through life on autopilot and we don't really think about what it is that we're doing. So this is a great reminder to just pause, slow down, breathe while we're while
Definitely
we're going through
breathe.
that and think about what it is that we're doing and how we feel when we're doing those things, whether it's eating or whether it's movement. So yeah, I think it's a great reminder, honestly, to do that. I love it.
Good.
And then sleep. People are like, I just get by on 5 hours." And I've been part of a coaching program where we did a whole module on the benefits of sleep, so all the science behind sleep, so I have a little bit of background on that, but to speak to the person listening, I only get 5 hours of sleep a night. I only get 6 hours of sleep a night." What are your thoughts? What do you say to somebody who tells you that?
Breathe. And sleep is the time for your body to repair. There are a lot of
Mm,
processes that are taking place. And that's great that you're working so hard and so diligent in your life. But for your organs and your body to really work at an optimal level, it needs to recover, it needs to recharge, and it will catch up on you. And there's tremendous amount of research that if you go for a lengthy period of time without sleep, it's almost like being drunk in
mm,
terms of like a drunk driver and that alertness. And when you start to sleep better, you tend to be more alert and more focused. Your energy's higher, and it's easier for you to get things done during the day and
mhm,
enjoy your life versus that little subtle fatigue that's there. So I
mhm.
describe it as the idea that when you're sleeping, your body truly is repairing, and it needs that time.
Yeah. Let's get practical. What's enough? It's enough sleep.
It all depends on each person. Again, that's going to go in the DNA.
Mm,
And
really?
some
Okay.
may be all right at 5 to 6 hours and they feel amazing. Others, it's 7 to 9 hours of sleep. There's different research, but you can usually tell in the way your body feels. There's a whole body of research that shows that waking up at the same time, going to bed at the same time. But
Mhm.
going back to the DNA can indicate whether you're a night owl or not. Some of
Mm,
these things are programmed into our genes, and
right.
recognizing that is you can change your life accordingly. If
Yeah,
you're a night owl, you might change even the profession you have or what the hours are that you work.
right. So you mentioned a couple of times what's in our DNA, and our DNA, determines what. So I'm sitting here thinking, like, okay, how do I find that out? 'Cause, like, how do you find out what's in your DNA? I might be a little bit behind, or maybe it's an obvious answer, but for
The-
me, I'm going there, like, how do I know what my DNA is?
Their DNA test. So
Okay,
that's something within my I've done, and I've given myself about 5 different DNA tests. I've never used the
gotcha,
big companies because I'm very much into privacy. I want to make sure things aren't sold. But when I
gotcha.
did my first DNA assessment, and this was in 2015, 2017, with the company DNA Fit, they were bought out. So I'm not going to say I just be careful there. But I really discovered that for myself, I need things like recovery. I need
Mm.
48 hours, and I wasn't recovering. I
Oh,
have more
wow.
endurance genes. That's why running a marathon wasn't that hard. It was hard, but it was not as difficult as it would be
Yeah.
for my husband. It's more sprinter genes, to give you
Mm,
an idea, or
mhm.
whether you need more heavy weights, less
Oh,
reps, or
interesting.
more.
I didn't think you could
And
find
it
that out
gives
from
you more.
a DNA test. I just think it's
Yeah,
fascinating. Like,
it's
I'm a runner too. I run 3 miles a day, and, like, I don't even think twice. I get up 5 a.m. in the morning, go run 3 miles, then I go to work, and they're like, "You just ran 3 miles?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's like nothing."
yeah.
I ran a half marathon too, and yeah, it was It was but it wasn't hard. It's like, "Yeah, okay, I'll go out, run my half marathon. Okay, I'm done." What's
Yeah, we
next?
probably have similar genes there.
Yeah, yeah.
But since 2017, it has gotten more sophisticated. There's more
Mhm,
information. So even things like whether you're a night owl or not, that biological clock. When I give these tests to individuals, I say you can't just go, "This is how I am," but it gives you a foundation to maybe understand some of the behaviors and some things that were easy, some things that were more difficult for you
mhm,
with those aha
mm,
moments
mhm,
so you can
mm.
tap into it. Again, it's all about that inner wisdom.
Yeah, yeah. So this idea of a vibrant sage, let's put it into a package then. If somebody asks you, is like, okay, I've got these 5 pillars. Do they kind of represent what a vibrant sage is? If you cultivate each of those 5 areas, is that because I'm still trying to picture in my mind, I'm trying to picture a person, or maybe I've got this wrong. So how would you just sum up a vibrant sage?
I see the 5 pillars as healthy lifestyle categories, whether
Mm,
you put a label of the vibrant sage or not. And I've
mm,
tried to create a way of looking at these areas in our life that make it less complicated because you're not always looking outside for what's best, but you start to tap in to what feels right for you and
yeah.
trusting yourself unapologetically. And as life gets crazy, sometimes maybe you're not always running 3 miles. And that's okay. But coming back because you like doing it. So it's not always things are completely balanced, but it's just the idea is to give you something easy to look at. Let's say it's nutrition and you've gone on a trip and now you're feeling exhausted and you've been drinking a lot and not eating as healthy. You can go, ooh, you might tap back into I've been really moving a lot. I definitely got a lot of sleep. Maybe it was nutrition. It's a way to tap. Ideally, it's for everybody to discover within the best habits for them that they can sustain over a long period of time until they no longer work. And then you reassess again.
That makes
That
sense.
makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's just taking it sounds like you take a whole life approach to things, not just compartmentalizing them, but looking at everything in the big picture. I'm going to switch gears ever so slightly because I asked this question, you answered it on my intake sheet. And I loved your answer. So I really do want to ask it. So if you could go back in time to your younger self and deliver a message, what would it be and why? I loved your answer.
See if I can remember exactly how I put it. I tell your younger self you are amazing. And not to and I know I said it differently, but not to play it small. I often go back to my younger self, my 4-year-old self. I don't know what happened at that age. And I was gregarious and I just wanted to absorb everything life had to offer. And I was just happy and carefree. And something changed that where I became very protective.
Mm.
And so going back, I go back to my younger self. I would go back and say, be unapologetically you. Let your voice just be you. I mean, that's all I can say. Just unapologetically, because you're just what you're supposed to be.
I love
I
that.
hope that's how I said it,
Yeah,
but that's how I
it was, I think sometimes what we do is we just, we're afraid to be that 4-year-old. So we're afraid to go back and just unapologetically be who that person we really, really, really want to be. It takes a lot of courage. It really does. It takes a lot of courage to look at and say, okay, I want to now be somebody else. I lived this entire life this one way, and it really wasn't I didn't feel authentic in that. If what's something that you thought was going to be hard in your life challenges, but really turned out wasn't that challenging? And then flip it. What wound up being challenging for you? Or I'm sorry, what do you think would be easy but was wound up being hard?
I thought divorcing my husband of 23 years was going to be easy.
You thought it was gonna be easy? I thought people would say that was gonna be hard to get divorced, but
And I shouldn't be laughing about it, but by then I just realized I needed to have a change, and I was the one who left the marriage. I thought I was prepared for it, but it was
Mm,
there in that time that I realized I didn't exactly know who I was other than being identified as the wife, the mother, the
mhm.
therapist. And the question about what was hard but ended up being easy, and I can't even remember what I said in there. And even now, I mean, should have remembered that. I don't usually think of things out that way. I didn't think of the book as being hard. Yeah.
Yes,
Mm,
sometimes things that flow out of life really aren't hard. They seem hard. I wrote a book as well, and people are like, "Wow, you wrote a book." I wrote a book in, less than 4 months. So I started in January, and I was done by March, and people are like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I did." It's just because it flowed, it was natural for me, and as I started writing, I just kept writing, you know? It wasn't hard for me, and it's always interesting when I ask that question because easy and hard is relative to the person receiving the question. Because what's hard to you might be easy to me and vice versa. So I think when we take the English language and we unpack it a little bit, something is what it is what we want it to be, how we perceive it versus what it may or may not really be. I don't know.
right. I know when I first started to write the book, the first few months was easy. But then once I started getting the edits and
Mm,
feeling like I needed to make the changes, then there were periods where I just had to stop because I was just completely stuck.
mm,
And there was even one stage not that long ago as I was finishing the purpose chapter. Really, what is it? It's a very abstract concept, living with purpose
mm, mhm.
in
'Cause
many
it's different for
ways.
everybody. Yeah, it's gonna be different
It's
for everybody. Do you
and
fi
at that point, I almost wanted to like I didn't know whether I was going to finish it. And meditation's very important for me. And I was meditating, and my mom, who passed away at the age of 62, sort of came in my mind. And my mom said that the book was needed because if she had had this knowledge, maybe she wouldn't have died. She would have
Mm,
taken better care of herself. And that ended up being a motivator to, okay, I can't give up. This
right.
it was almost 4 years. You had 3 months.
Oh, so
Wow.
purpose did drive you then to actually go through and finish with the book. Um, yeah, I love to ask, my guests 3 questions every time, and, let's just dive into some of them. What is one book or resource that's had a significant impact on you?
You asked me that, and I pulled my book out so I'd make sure. It was called Lifespan, and it's called Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. And again, because of my interest in the DNA and going to the cellular level, it was just fascinating. And it was through Dr. Sinclair, who talked about the horny cell, that young, vibrant cell. And in my mind, it just sort of lit up the thought, what happens if we have all of these young new cells coming in and then we're getting rid of the dead cells, the senescent cells? It had a huge impact, particularly on my book, my
Mhm.
writing, and just how I perceive aging for
Mm,
myself as well as those that I work with.
okay. What's one question or topic you wish I would've asked about, and how would you have answered or the question or expanded on the topic?
And I wish you had asked about what it was like getting married the second time. Because there was a lot of soul searching in that and being able
I
to take
bet.
that change and as I'm finding myself, and I don't usually quite share that side of it, because it was a little challenging and the family's blending and all of
Oh,
that.
sure. Sure.
But that was and I know because of that relationship, it has had a tremendous impact on where I am now, and my current husband's been extremely supportive. in my growth and watching me shine. And I guess I
It
don't
makes
give
all the
him enough
difference.
kudos. So maybe that's what I want to share here.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, well, that's nice. It is, and for anybody in particular, I mean, anybody really, I mean, if you've got somebody behind you who supports you and really propels you forward, that can make the world a difference. So I can, I can relate. Definitely. I can relate. As we start winding down here, as we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
I want them to realize getting older isn't an option, but how you age is.
What do you mean?
So we chronologically, we're getting older. I'm not going to be 50 again, but the things that I can do can make my cells a little younger and I can feel more vibrant and more alive. So for somebody listening, I would take in a deep breath. I guess I have a theme there. Recognize how special it is that you are alive and you are here, to know deep within you have special gifts to give to the world that are unique to only you, and feel that, embrace that, and then be unapologetic as you go forward to give that. But you do need your health to optimize that. So don't
Mm,
sacrifice that. But be you in some, it can take a little time to find that, but you can. And as we get older, we think time is a blessing where we can tap into that wisdom. So, everybody's listening, know that you're amazing. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And you've got a special place, and the world needs you to be happy and needs you to be healthy so you
mm.
can give your gifts.
That's a beautiful message because we all have purpose. And I'm so thankful that you share that to remind us that each and every one of us listening does have purpose in this life, and to go out, and if you don't know what it is, just go out and find it. You everybody has it. Nancy, how can people find you and reach out to you?
Great. My website is thevibrantsage.com. My book, selfless plug, The Vibrant Sage,
Love it.
Arousing Energy, Happiness. It's available on Amazon, both on Kindle and paperback. Instagram, Nancy underscore The Vibrant Sage. And on Facebook, The Vibrant
Perfect.
Sage. And LinkedIn,
Well,
all
this
those
has been
places.
a great conversation, Nancy. I'm so glad that we were able to connect and you were able to join me today. I'm really excited about thinking about life like a vibrant sage and then exploring these pillars of breath, movement, nutrition, sleep, and especially purpose. I love the purpose end of it. So, thank you so much for the gift of your time. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.